The human mind can be steered before we even realize a choice was made, and perhaps more unsettling, these hidden forces are at play in our everyday lives, subtly shaping our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. James, this isn't about some distant, dramatic idea of mind control, is it?
No, Lily, it's far more pervasive and often much more mundane than science fiction suggests. We're talking about everything from how our attention is guided, to how beliefs take root, to the invisible patterns that influence our decisions long before we consciously acknowledge them. Our minds are constantly being shaped in ways we rarely notice.
So it's not about being controlled in a puppet master sense, but more about subtle influence. You mentioned that some of these forces are natural, built into how our brains work, while others are learned and used in areas like persuasion and leadership. Can you give an example of one of these natural forces that perhaps many of us would find surprising?
Certainly. One of the strangest discoveries in neuroscience is that our brains can begin preparing for an action even before we consciously decide to make that action. Famous laboratory experiments show a buildup of brain activity, a readiness potential, that starts before a person reports feeling they've made a choice to press a button or flex a wrist. It's as if the mind leans toward an action, and our conscious self only becomes aware of the decision after the fact.
That's quite a statement. So our awareness is more of a late arriving witness than the commander of our actions. It makes you question the very nature of free will, even if the debate is still open.
It certainly does. The feeling of choosing is real, but it might not be the whole story. This idea that our brains are initiating actions before we're consciously aware challenges our fundamental understanding of self-determination. It suggests a powerful, hidden machinery at work.
And how does this hidden machinery relate to something like hypnosis, which many people dismiss as mere stage entertainment?
Hypnosis, in its real scientific context, isn't about swinging watches. It's about how suggestion, under the right conditions, can genuinely alter experience. We have studies showing people under hypnosis reporting less pain during medical procedures. Brain scans even reveal changes in areas related to attention and pain processing. This isn't faking it. It's a measurable shift in how the mind processes sensation.
So language alone, a suggestion, can actually rewrite what feels real. That's incredible. But it's not unlimited power, right? It doesn't turn people into puppets.
Exactly. It doesn't force impossible acts or make people violate their core values, but it shows how a trusted voice, delivering a suggestion with expectation, can help the brain rewrite its own experience from the inside. It's a powerful demonstration of the mind's flexibility and suggestibility.
Moving from internal suggestion to external influence, you mentioned that repetition can make strange ideas feel true with alarming speed. We've all seen this, haven't we? This illusory truth effect.
Absolutely. The human brain loves familiarity. When we hear a statement repeatedly, it becomes easier to process, and that ease can be mistakenly interpreted as truth. A claim doesn't need strong evidence. Sometimes it just needs to be repeated across news, podcasts, social media. A rumor, initially nonsense, starts to feel steady and familiar.
This really explains the power of propaganda then. The mind's built to save effort, and familiar information takes less effort, so comfort becomes credibility.
Precisely. Repeated slogans can shape entire cultures, not necessarily because everyone is gullible, but because the brain quietly treats what's well known as safer than what's uncertain. What returns often can start to feel like what belongs.
That makes sense. And speaking of pervasive influence, the famous Milgram experiment showed that people will obey authority even when it clashes with conscience. That's a chilling lesson.
It is. Ordinary people in a lab setting were instructed to deliver what they believed were painful electric shocks. Many protested, were distressed, yet a surprising number continued when an authority figure calmly insisted the experiment required it. The study's fame comes not from revealing monsters, but from showing how easily conscience can be pressured when authority appears legitimate and organized.
So it's not about individuals having cruelty in their hearts, but about a system that transfers responsibility upwards. A uniform and a confident instruction can make private doubt feel insignificant.
That's right. While many participants resisted and real life is more complex, the experiment remains unforgettable for illustrating how easily obedience becomes frighteningly ordinary. It highlights a profound vulnerability to legitimate-seeming authority.
And the way memory itself can be manipulated by social cues is equally unsettling. We tend to think of memory as a reliable recording, but you say it's more like wet paint.
It truly is. Memory is far from a perfect recording. It's constantly being reconstructed. In classic experiments, people watched footage of a car accident. When asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed, they often recalled greater speed and more damage, even remembering broken glass that wasn't there, compared to if the word hit was used.
So, a tiny change in language after an event can reshape what we believe we saw. That has huge implications for eyewitness testimony, police interviews, and even family arguments.
It does. Our memories aren't always what happened, but often what happened after someone described it. This reconstructive nature of memory means it's surprisingly open to suggestion, especially when imagination, repetition, and authority are involved.
And advertisers seem to have mastered this. You say they've long known that attention can be trained and trapped using methods more precise than most people realize.
Modern advertising isn't just about showing products, it's about teaching our minds what to notice, what to want, and how to feel before rational thought even forms. Bright colors, repeated jingles, faces guiding our gaze, these all work below awareness. Brands become linked with safety, pleasure, status, making products feel like shortcuts to identity.
So we might think we're simply preferring one option, but our attention has been shaped over months or years. This is a subtle form of control, steering our choices without us realizing.
Exactly. Long before digital algorithms, advertisers studied eye movement and emotional association, understanding that controlling what people notice is the first step toward controlling what they eventually choose.
And speaking of powerful emotional triggers, fear, you call it one of the fastest tools ever used to control minds.
Few forces change the mind as quickly. When a threat feels real, attention narrows, the body floods with stress chemicals, and complex reflection gives way to urgent reaction. This is useful if a predator is charging, but far more dangerous when leaders or media learn to trigger that same response on command.
Fear makes people cling to certainty, makes harsh measures seem reasonable, and can turn neighbors into suspects. History is full of examples where frightened populations accepted surveillance or censorship.
Yes, fear doesn't need to convince the whole mind, it only needs to alarm the body. Once that happens, the world feels smaller, choices fewer, and control can slip in, disguised as protection or survival.
It's a potent political and social instrument. And another subtle way our judgment can be swayed, you argue, is that the brain can mistake confidence for truth, even when facts disagree.
Humans are deeply sensitive to certainty. Someone who speaks smoothly, quickly, and sounds sure can seem more believable than someone careful, qualified, or correct. Confidence and accuracy aren't the same, yet our minds often treat them as such.
So, in courtrooms, elections, or everyday conversations, the most persuasive voice isn't always the most truthful one, it's just the least hesitant. This helps misinformation spread through charismatic speakers.
The style of delivery can overpower the substance. We're reading tone, posture, pace, and certainty. Deep down, confidence feels like evidence of mastery, but it can be performed and weaponized. A bold falsehood can outrun a modest truth simply by sounding more certain.
And it's not just external factors. You mentioned that sleep, stress, and isolation can make persuasion dramatically more powerful. This combination has been used deliberately throughout history.
A rested, connected mind is much harder to influence than an exhausted, overwhelmed, or lonely one. Sleep deprivation weakens attention and emotional control. Chronic stress shifts the brain to survival mode, favoring quick answers over skeptical thought. And isolation makes people hunger for belonging, making manipulative relationships or ideologies feel magnetic.
So, high control groups often disrupt sleep, increase pressure, and separate people from outside support to weaken their independent thinking.
Exactly. They don't always need brilliant arguments. They just weaken the conditions for independent thought. Influence then slips in through fatigue, fear, and the desperate relief of feeling held by something definite. The mind isn't equally persuadable every day.
This makes me think of natural mind control. You mentioned some parasites can hijack animal behavior like living puppet masters. That's a dark thought.
Nature invented mind control long before humans did. Toxoplasma, for example, makes rodents less afraid of cat scent, leading them to be eaten and spreading the parasite. Hairworms drive insects toward water, and cordyceps fungi manipulate insects to climb, helping spread spores.
These aren't just vague influences, they're targeted behavioral changes serving another organism's needs. It's fascinating and unsettling how a victim's body moves, but the behavior no longer truly belongs to it.
It highlights that in the natural world, controlling a mind can be a survival strategy. This biological reality provides a stark backdrop for understanding human vulnerabilities to influence.
But there's also a hopeful side to the mind's power. The placebo effect can trigger real healing simply because belief changes the body. That's an astonishing discovery.
It truly is. In medical studies, patients improve after receiving inactive pills if they believe treatment has begun. Pain eases, tremors soften, mood lifts. Measurable changes appear in heart rate, hormone release, and brain chemistry. This doesn't mean illness is imaginary, it means belief becomes part of the body's response.
So the brain is constantly predicting what comes next, and those predictions influence how symptoms are felt and how systems behave. It's a clear reminder that the border between mind and body is far less solid than it appears.
Yes, and expectation extends beyond healing. It can alter taste, pain, vision, and even physical performance. If you tell people a drink is expensive, many will swear it tastes richer. Tell athletes they've taken a booster, and some push harder even if it's inert.
So our perception bends to what we expect. This is what makes expectation so powerful. It's not just a thought, but part of the machinery that builds our reality moment by moment.
We don't merely detect the world, we meet it with predictions already running. This priming effect means our minds are constantly being prepared by what came just before. A word, an image, a smell, making certain ideas easier to access without our awareness.
And false memories can be planted with shocking ease under the right conditions, changing how we think about our own past. It's not just external events, our internal history is mutable.
Memory feels intimate, owned, like proof, yet it's surprisingly open to suggestion. Studies show people coming to believe they were lost in a shopping mall as children, an event that never happened. The effect gets stronger when the invented story is plausible and emotionally vivid. The line between imagining and remembering blurs.
That's deeply unsettling. A memory can feel deeply personal, yet be partly constructed. This has enormous consequences for therapy, policing, and courtroom testimony.
The mind doesn't keep the past in perfect storage, it rebuilds it. And sometimes the rebuild quietly includes things that were never there, shaped by suggestion or repetition.
And people will often conform publicly even when they privately know better. This gap between what people say and what they believe might be wider than we imagine.
There's a powerful force in simply standing apart. In classic experiments, people would follow a group giving a clearly wrong answer to a visual problem, even when their own eyes told them otherwise. Some later admitted knowing the answer was wrong, but not wanting to be the lone dissenter.
So, conformity doesn't always erase private belief. It often just pushes it underground. A false consensus forms because each person thinks they're one of the few who sees the problem, and silence becomes evidence.
Exactly. Public reality begins to drift away from what many people secretly know. And another subtle yet powerful force in modern media is how a familiar voice can lower skepticism before a single claim is checked.
Trust often begins with tone, not just evidence. A voice you know, a rhythm you've heard for years, can open the door before any argument is tested. This is why broadcasters and influencers are so persuasive.
The listener isn't just hearing information, they're hearing reassurance. The sound itself carries emotional history. A trusted voice feels safe, competent, warm, or wise simply because the brain has learned to associate it with those qualities. Scrutiny relaxes.
So, misinformation can spread effectively through beloved figures because the bond comes first and evaluation comes later, if at all. It's not what is said, but the voice that makes the mind willing to receive it.
Yes, and this links to social proof, where nonsense can sound sensible if enough people repeat it. Digital platforms have amplified this, making it more powerful than ever.
Humans constantly check each other for clues about what's true or safe. If everyone looks up, you look up. This instinct can be exploited when many people appear to believe something, making the claim feel more plausible.
Reviews, crowds, trending tags, they all send the same message. Others accept this, so maybe you should too. The problem is that visible agreement isn't the same as careful truth. Numbers can be inflated, crowds curated, bots imitating consensus, yet the signal still works because the mind reads popularity as evidence of value.
So, absurd ideas can become mainstream because repetition, paired with apparent public support, makes even weak claims seem anchored in something larger than themselves. Consensus can be manufactured and then mistaken for reality.
Exactly. And group pressure can distort judgment in ways that feel completely normal, so most people never realize it's happening. When everyone laughs at the same moment or approves the same ideas, your own judgment starts to bend. Not because you're weak, but because our social brain is built to track belonging.
Disagreement feels costly, doubt becomes awkward. Over time, the mind stops experiencing the pressure as pressure and simply starts to feel it as reality. This explains why bubbles form so easily in politics or online communities.
Once a shared view becomes the emotional norm, people don't just pretend to agree, the perception of what seems reasonable begins to shift inside that pressure itself. It's a powerful and subtle form of influence.
And in a related vein, people often trust confident lies more than hesitant truths. This bias shapes who gets believed in nearly every domain of life.
Truth doesn't always win the first impression. The mind responds more readily to the person who speaks without pauses or doubt. Confidence reads as competence, suggesting knowledge and certainty. Hesitation, by contrast, can be mistaken for weakness, even when it comes from honesty or nuance.
So, a smooth falsehood can travel well through public life because it arrives with the emotional texture of authority. A truthful person who pauses to weigh details might sound less convincing simply because their performance is less polished.
This bias affects witnesses, teachers, politicians. The danger is clear. If confidence becomes a shortcut for truth, the loudest and boldest speaker can outrun reality. Our minds sometimes reward certainty not because it's right, but because it feels easier to follow.
Music also guides emotion long before words have their turn. Filmmakers and advertisers have understood this for a long time.
Before a speech convinces, before a slogan lands, music is already moving the emotional ground. A low, uneasy note creates tension. A rising swell promises hope. Change the soundtrack under the same image, and the meaning changes. This principle extends to rallies, advertisements, and religious ceremonies.
Music prepares the body to feel what comes next, shaping breathing, expectation, and pace. It's a subtle instrument of influence.
It works on mood first. By the time language arrives, the emotional direction may already be set, and the listener might mistake that feeling for their own conclusion. Uniforms work similarly, creating instant obedience by borrowing the power of symbols.
A uniform isn't just fabric, it carries authority, hierarchy, and expectation. A lab coat suggests expertise, a military uniform signals command, a police badge creates immediate compliance.
The brain responds quickly to symbols, sorting people into roles and adjusting behavior. This is useful, but it also creates vulnerability. When authority is worn on the body, appearance can borrow trust that hasn't been earned. A costume can unlock doors and bypass suspicion.
So the symbol of power influences the room before the actual person has done anything, and scarcity seems to make ordinary things feel urgent, valuable, and hard to resist. Once you recognize this trigger, you see it everywhere.
Indeed, tell people there's plenty, and they walk past. Tell them only a few remain, or a chance vanishes at midnight, and the same object suddenly feels important. Scarcity changes the emotional temperature of a decision, creating pressure and sharpening desire.
This is why limited editions, vanishing offers, and low stock warnings are so common. The fear of missing out can feel worse than paying too much.
Exactly. This bias extends beyond shopping. Scarcity makes attention more valuable, time more dramatic, and exclusive groups more alluring. Something can seem ordinary one moment, then precious the instant the mind believes it may soon be gone.
And our attention itself is easier to direct than our conscious minds expect. The people who design our daily environments know this better than we do.
Most people feel they decide what to notice, but attention is pulled by movement, novelty, contrast, emotion, and design. A bright object, a sudden noise, a threatening face. These all grab our eye quickly. Magicians build performances around this, making us miss what's right in front of us.
The remarkable part is that we rarely notice our attention being moved. It feels like natural seeing. So headlines, interfaces, room layouts, and body language all compete to steer that spotlight.
Once attention is captured, the rest of the mind often follows. Influence begins with simple control over where the spotlight falls. First, direct the eyes, then shape what the mind builds next.
This leads back to the idea of priming, nudging choices using clues we barely notice, which might be happening to us right now without our awareness.
The mind is constantly being prepared by what came just before. A word, an image, a smell, a subtle pattern. These can make certain ideas easier to access. If the brain has just been exposed to concepts like age or danger, later behavior and judgment can tilt in that direction. The mind doesn't begin each moment from zero, it carries traces forward.
So everyday environments are full of cues. The music in a shop, the imagery in a campaign, the order of questions in a survey, these all prime the path our thoughts are likely to take.
Exactly. And another cognitive bias, the anchoring effect, means decisions can be trapped around the first number heard, a principle negotiators and salespeople use daily.
The first number introduced into a situation can shape judgment long after people think they've moved beyond it. Mention a high price first, and a lower one seems more reasonable. That first value becomes an anchor.
What's fascinating is that the anchor doesn't need to be sensible. It can be arbitrary or irrelevant and still leave a trace. The brain likes having a reference point, and once one appears, it's hard to escape its gravity. A number heard early can quietly bend the whole conversation.
And framing changes minds by changing the story around the same fact. This is a powerful tool in politics and advertising.
Present the same outcome in two different ways, and people react as if they're hearing two different realities. Say a treatment saves 90 out of 100. It sounds reassuring. Say it lets 10 out of 100 die, and it lands with darker force. Nothing factual changes, only the frame, yet it shapes emotion, risk, and moral judgment.
This tool doesn't need to invent falsehood, it just guides interpretation. Political language, journalism, advertising, they all use it constantly. Is a measure a protection or a restriction? Each frame invites a different feeling before analysis begins.
Changing the story around a fact changes what the fact seems to mean. And on a more personal level, eye contact can increase compliance even when nothing else changes. This ancient signal still shapes modern behavior.
A steady look can do more than signal attention. It creates connection, pressure, warmth, or challenge in seconds. In social experiments, people are more likely to respond or cooperate when eye contact is involved.
Being seen changes behavior. It makes requests harder to dismiss and social norms harder to escape. Eye contact carries emotional information rapidly: confidence, sincerity, dominance. It deepens trust, but also intensifies influence. A direct gaze turns an abstract interaction into a personal one, making agreement much harder to refuse.
Then there's flattery, which can lower defenses even when people know it's flattery. This strange vulnerability operates faster than conscious thought.
Praise has a peculiar power because it changes how we feel about ourselves. A compliment creates warmth, lifts status, and triggers a glow of belonging, softening skepticism. This works even when the praise is obvious. The emotional effect arrives faster than the critical one. Flattery whispers that you're seen, valued, special.
The mind enjoys that message, and enjoyment can spill over into trust. This explains why praise is so common in sales, manipulation, leadership, and cult recruitment.
It's about disarming caution. Someone who makes you feel brighter in the moment gains access to parts of judgment that would otherwise stay guarded. This also connects to the foot in the door effect, turning tiny yeses into bigger ones.
Influence often works best in steps. Ask for something large, people resist. Ask for something small first, and a door opens. Agree to a minor request, and you're more likely to accept a larger, related one later.
The first yes changes the story they tell about themselves. Now they are the kind of person who supports this cause. The next request feels like a continuation, not a new decision. This effect is so elegant and dangerous because it relies on consistency. Each small agreement can become a stepping stone.
Many manipulative systems begin this way, not with shocking demands, but with harmless, easy, almost forgettable first steps. And a small gift can create pressure to give something back. This invisible social rule is deeply exploited.
Few social rules are as powerful and invisible as reciprocity. When someone gives us something, even tiny, we feel a need to return the gesture. This builds trust, but it can also be exploited. A free sample, an unexpected favor, a gift before a request, these create subtle obligation.
Suddenly, saying no feels colder than it should. The request is harder to refuse because it's leaning on the social weight of debt.
The gift can be small, while the return asked for is much larger. Influence begins with kindness, then quietly collects interest. This extends to urgent countdowns which hijack judgment and shrink critical thinking.
A ticking clock changes the mind. A vanishing timer or a warning that a chance will disappear in minutes makes thought speed up. Urgency narrows attention, shifting the brain away from reflection toward rapid action.
In that state, people rely on habit, fear of loss, and emotional shortcuts. This is why countdowns are common in advertising and sales. Even artificial deadlines create a psychological emergency. Questions feel costly, caution feels slow.
It's remarkable how quickly this can override reason. People know they dislike being pressured, yet they click or agree because time pressure makes hesitation feel more painful than a bad decision.
And then there are repeated slogans which bypass reflection by rewarding familiarity over accuracy. Language itself can become a cage.
A slogan doesn't ask the mind to think long. It asks it to recognize, repeat, and feel. Once familiar, it moves with less resistance through memory, feeling settled and known. That feeling can be more persuasive than evidence.
History is full of short lines that built loyalty or simplified fear. The more often they're repeated, the more natural they sound. Soon, people aren't weighing the statement, they're inhabiting it. A slogan compresses a worldview into a rhythm the tongue enjoys.
And rhymes can make weak claims sound wiser than they are. This quirk of cognition is exploited in courts, markets, and politics.
There's something almost magical about a sentence that clicks into rhythm. Rhyming statements often feel more truthful or insightful than non-rhyming ones, even if the meaning isn't stronger. That ease of processing is mistaken for wisdom. It feels polished, memorable.
Proverbs, slogans, sales lines, they lean on sound rather than substance. A weak idea dressed in rhyme can sound older, deeper, and more reliable than it truly is.
The effect is subtle. Sometimes persuasion doesn't win by offering better logic, but because the sentence lands with a rhythm that feels like truth before truth is examined. Simple language also often persuades more deeply than complicated language.
Complex language can impress, but simple language reaches farther. A message from clear, familiar words slips into the mind with little friction. More energy is left for feeling, agreement, and memory. This is why great propagandists and advertisers avoid complicated phrasing.
They aren't trying to sound scholarly, they're trying to sound inevitable. A short sentence feels solid and easy to remember, repeatable by anyone. Complicated language slows emotion. So simplicity can be a tool of clarity, but also a tool of control. The easiest words are often the hardest to resist.
And confusion can make people more suggestible while they search for clarity. This technique is deliberately used in cults, scams, and propaganda.
When the mind loses its footing, it hungers for direction. Confusion creates discomfort because we want patterns, causes, and coherent stories. In moments of uncertainty, people may accept explanations they'd normally question because any clear answer feels better than fog.
So, contradictory information, overwhelming jargon, or rapidly changing rules can make people easier to influence. When mentally tangled, the first confident guide seems appealing.
Manipulators understand this. They flood with complexity, break expectations, create disorientation, then offer a neat interpretation that promises relief. The suggestion enters as an exit from confusion. The mind isn't just persuaded by the answer, but by the soothing contrast between chaos and clarity.
And exhaustion weakens resistance because the brain wants the easiest answer. This vulnerability is far more exploited than most people realize.
A tired mind doesn't reason like a rested one. When energy drops, the brain conserves effort, leaning on shortcuts, habits, and emotional reactions. Long hours, sleep loss, and mental overload strip away skepticism. Someone who'd normally question a claim might nod or give in because resistance becomes too expensive.
This explains why fatigue matters in interrogation, sales, or high-demand groups. Exhaustion doesn't just make people slower, it changes the kind of thinking they can access. Nuance fades, defaults take over, and relief starts to look wiser than truth.
It's ordinary. You don't need dramatic coercion. Sometimes enough tiredness makes the easiest answer feel like the right one. Loneliness, too, increases vulnerability to groups that promise certainty and belonging.
Loneliness isn't just sadness, it's deep social hunger, and hunger changes judgment. When people feel cut off, they're sensitive to invitations offering identity, warmth, a place to stand.
A group that says, "We see you, we need you, you belong here," can be irresistibly powerful to someone without connection. This is why extremist circles and controlling movements present themselves as families. They don't begin with demands, they begin with recognition. Longing becomes the bait, and certainty the reward.
Once a lonely person is emotionally held by a group, ideas that seemed strange can feel sacred because they're tied to connection itself. The mind doesn't just adopt beliefs, it protects the home those beliefs represent.
Loneliness becomes a doorway through which control enters softly. Shame has also been used for centuries to police thought and behavior, reaching deeper than physical punishment.
Shame threatens the self. To be shamed isn't just being told you did something wrong, it's feeling exposed, lowered, pushed to the edge of belonging. Communities, religions, families, states, they understand this power.
Public humiliation, forced confession, moral disgrace, these shape behavior without prisons. People monitor themselves, dreading others' eyes. Over time, that gaze moves inward. They carry an internal judge. Shame disciplines thought before it's spoken, shrinking curiosity and silencing dissent.
A punished body may resist, but a shamed identity often polices itself, and guilt can be turned into a leash when forgiveness is tightly controlled.
Guilt can be healthy, but in manipulative systems, it's stretched for control. A leader or institution keeps people feeling perpetually indebted, then positions themselves as the gatekeeper of forgiveness. Relief becomes conditional, obedience earns approval, and doubt risks blame.
The person is kept chasing a clean slate that never fully arrives. This happens in abusive relationships, rigid groups, turning ordinary imperfection into permanent leverage.
The controlling force doesn't need constant wrongdoing, it just needs to keep the target emotionally uncertain enough to keep asking how to make things right. Guilt becomes a tether, and the person stays close because release depends on the very hand tightening the leash. Public rituals can also bind beliefs to identity more strongly than arguments.
Ideas are more powerful when enacted. Public rituals, standing, kneeling, chanting, saluting, wearing symbols, turn belief into behavior, and behavior has strange power over the mind.
Once allegiance is performed publicly, the belief feels more personal, harder to question. The body has participated, and the social cost of stepping back grows. Rituals appear in religion, politics, armies to anchor values in memory, emotion, and identity. A speech can be forgotten, but a ritual felt in the body often lingers.
It becomes a scene the mind returns to when asking, "Who am I?" Belief deepens when not only heard, but lived in public, and chant and repetition can synchronize bodies, moods, and shared conviction.
There's a reason chants echo through stadiums and rallies. Repeated together, they bring breathing into rhythm, align attention, and create the sensation of many people becoming one. A chant is simple, needing pulse and return, something the body can join effortlessly.
Once that happens, emotion spreads through timing. Excitement rises, doubt quiets. The individual feels carried by a force larger than private thought. Synchronized actions strengthens bonding and trust.
The mind isn't merely hearing agreement, it's physically participating. This can be inspiring, but also dangerous. Shared rhythm creates solidarity, but can make conviction feel stronger than it truly is, simply because so many bodies are moving together. And crowds can make individuals act unlike the person they think they are.
A crowd isn't just many people, it's a change in psychological weather. Emotion moves differently. Attention narrows. A shout becomes permission. A surge becomes momentum. Actions unthinkable alone feel natural when echoed by hundreds.
Crowds produce astonishing generosity, courage, panic, violence. The individual self becomes less dominant, borrowing cues from the mass, reacting faster, reflecting less. History offers endless scenes of this transformation, from ecstatic gatherings to destructive mobs.
The crowd doesn't reveal a secret monster in everyone. It reveals how radically context can reshape behavior when many minds lock into one emotional current. This brings us to de-individuation, which lowers restraint when people feel hidden inside a group.
De-individuation is when personal identity and accountability fade under the cover of a group, costume, or mask. Restraint weakens. A person might act more recklessly or follow impulses they'd usually check. This explains why riots, online pile-ons, and masked violence escalate quickly.
The individual no longer feels fully visible as a single moral self. Responsibility blurs. This doesn't automatically make people violent, but it changes the balance between conscience and impulse. When the sense of being distinctly seen fades, behavior can slide in surprising directions.
Hiddenness becomes a strange kind of permission. Propaganda, too, works best when it feels familiar, moral, and emotionally simple, requiring us to notice what isn't shown as much as what is.
Effective propaganda rarely announces itself. It's dressed as common sense, duty, compassion. It wraps itself in respected values and understood stories. It avoids complexity, offering a world with bright lines and easy villains.
It reduces confusion by turning history into a simple drama. Once that frame takes hold, people don't feel manipulated, they feel enlightened. Emotional simplicity is key. If a message can make fear, loyalty, anger, and righteousness travel together, it's easier to repeat and defend.
Propaganda doesn't need to be elegant, it needs to feel natural enough to live inside ordinary speech. People then carry it for free, believing they're speaking for themselves while the script speaks through them. And censorship shapes minds not only by hiding facts, but alternatives.
Censorship isn't just a wall around forbidden information. Its deeper power is narrowing what people can imagine. When certain ideas, histories, or ways of speaking are removed from public life, the loss isn't just factual, it's conceptual. People live inside a smaller map of reality.
Possibilities that were never voiced start to feel impossible on their own. A censored society doesn't just know less, it thinks within tighter boundaries. If alternatives never circulate, the official version feels like the only one.
Silence itself becomes part of persuasion. Over time, people stop asking certain questions, not because they were answered, but because the language and examples needed to form them have disappeared. What cannot be publicly imagined is harder to privately believe. Totalitarian systems control language before everything else.
Before controlling movement, power controls the words used to describe movement. Language shapes perception. If a government redefines loyalty, treason, or truth, it changes what people think they're seeing.
Totalitarian systems flood public life with slogans and framed labels that turn political goals into moral facts. Opponents become parasites, surveillance becomes safety, obedience becomes virtue. Once language is bent, cruelty sounds necessary, and dissent sounds wicked.
This transformation begins long before total control. Words prepare the ground, teaching the public how to sort reality. By the time force is obvious, many minds are already organized by a vocabulary that makes the force seem justified. Renaming things can quietly change what people think is possible.
A new name does more than describe. It redirects feeling, expectation, moral judgment. Call civilians collateral damage, and distance opens. Call torture enhanced interrogation, and brutality blurs. Call exploitation an opportunity, and the mind processes reality through a softer frame.
Renaming works because words aren't neutral labels. They help organize the world. A changed name can make an action feel technical instead of violent, temporary instead of permanent. This is why political language is fought over so fiercely.
Whoever names the situation first gains a hidden advantage, choosing the emotional doorway. Once a label spreads, it stops sounding like a choice and starts sounding like reality, changing what people believe can be accepted or resisted. Euphemisms, too, smuggle cruelty into speech without sounding cruel.
This is one of the most unsettling powers of language, hiding violence behind softness. Euphemisms take shocking acts and wrap them in terms that feel tidy or harmless.
People aren't fired, they're let go. Civilians aren't killed, losses are incurred. Each phrase removes blood, pain, faces. The mind is given a cleaner object. Moral revulsion depends on vividness. Strip away human reality, and resistance weakens. Bureaucracies, militaries, abusive individuals use this.
Softened language lowers emotional friction, creating distance where there should be nearness. The act hasn't changed, but the listener's contact with it has. Cruelty travels farther when speech carries it in padded gloves. This also applies to conspiracy thinking, which can offer comforting control in a chaotic world.
A conspiracy theory can be frightening, but also comforting. In a chaotic world, randomness is hard to bear. Conspiracy thinking offers an alternative. There's a hidden pattern. Someone is steering events. Nothing is meaningless. Even terrible outcomes belong to an intentional design. That sense of secret order feels more manageable than true uncertainty.
And it offers status. The believer isn't powerless. They're awake, initiated. This combination of control, meaning, and belonging makes conspiracy thinking emotionally attractive, even when claims are wild. It's soothing anxiety and repairing wounded certainty.
That's why confronting such beliefs with bare facts alone often fails. The belief isn't only intellectual, it's emotional shelter. This leads to certainty, which can feel so good that doubt starts to feel dangerous.
Doubt is praised as intelligence, but emotionally, it's exhausting. To doubt is to remain open, unresolved. Certainty offers relief. It simplifies the world, tells you where to stand, who to trust.
Certainty can be intoxicating. Once people experience the comfort of a complete answer, ambiguity feels like a threat. Questions become irritating, nuance feels slippery. Anyone introducing complexity can seem like an enemy of clarity. This is a deep pathway into rigid belief.
The person isn't just attached to an idea, they're attached to the emotional calm it provides. Threatening the belief threatens stability, identity, and peace. Doubt no longer feels like healthy thinking, it feels like danger. This makes love bombing particularly effective, overwhelming suspicion by flooding a person with belonging.
At the beginning of some manipulative relationships, the target isn't threatened, they're adored. Attention, compliments, constant messages. They're told they're rare, special. This intensity feels magical, answering old human needs to be seen, wanted, admired. Suspicion struggles in that warmth.
The mind attaches safety to the affection's source. Later, when demands or control appear, the target often compares it to that dazzling beginning, hoping to earn it back. Love bombing doesn't take freedom away. It makes surrender feel like coming home. And isolation from outsiders makes extreme beliefs ordinary.
Beliefs don't exist in a vacuum. They're measured against surrounding voices. Remove outside contact, and that measuring system collapses. A person hearing only one set of explanations slowly loses the sense that alternatives ever felt real.
Ideas that would be absurd in ordinary life feel stable because no living contrast remains. This is why controlling groups discourage outside friendships, independent media, skeptical relatives.
Isolation does more than prevent criticism. It changes the emotional climate for belief. Once everyone around you treats the extreme as normal, normal feels distant and strange. People rarely feel their frame of reference shift. They just wake up in a world that no longer feels extreme. Sleep deprivation is another tool used to break down resistance.
Take away sleep and the mind doesn't just get tired, it starts coming apart. Attention fragments, emotions grow unstable, memory slips, time feels strange. The ability to challenge weakens fast.
This is why sleep deprivation is used in coercive settings. A sleepless person is easier to confuse, pressure, and more desperate for relief than truth. Even strong personalities agree or confess because the body pleads for rest. Sleep isn't a luxury, it's a foundation of a stable self. Remove it, and identity itself feels less solid.
Judgment softens, boundaries blur. The person depends on whoever controls the conditions of relief. Exhaustion hollows out the very structure resistance depends on. Interrogators also know unpredictability can destabilize the mind faster than force.
A mind under pressure tries to adapt. If rules are stable, people brace. Unpredictability destroys that advantage. When rewards and punishments arrive without pattern, when tone shifts, when timing is impossible to anticipate, the nervous system struggles. It's more destabilizing than direct force.
It keeps the body on alert, making relief feel as important as truth. People may say what they think the interrogator wants, not because it's real, but because a stable pattern seems like survival.
Unpredictability turns the environment into a weapon. The person resists a world that no longer makes sense. This leads to learned helplessness, trapping people into surrendering even when escape exists.
Repeated powerlessness can teach a creature to stop trying, even after freedom becomes possible. When animals or people experience enough uncontrollable pain, they may act as if nothing they do matters. Even when a path out appears, they fail to take it.
The lesson sinks too deep. Effort feels pointless. This happens in abusive homes, rigid institutions. Helplessness becomes internal. The prison moves inward. The door may be open, yet the person no longer experiences escape as real. They've learned not only fear, but futility.
Control is strongest when it no longer needs chains, because the mind itself believes action will change nothing. Trauma, too, can make authority feel safer than uncertainty, even when harmful.
After trauma, the nervous system stops asking what's truly good and asks what feels predictable. A harsh authority can sometimes answer that need better than freedom. Rules may be rigid, the leader cruel, but if it offers structure and a clear script for survival, it can feel safer than open uncertainty.
This explains why some traumatized people are drawn to controlling partners or strict ideologies. The attraction isn't foolishness, it's adaptation. Chaos once hurt them, so control resembles protection.
It creates deep loyalty to harmful systems. The body mistakes familiar tension for safety. Trauma reshapes the meaning of refuge itself. The mind runs toward whatever seems least unpredictable. Memory under stress becomes vivid in feeling but weaker in detail, shaping wrongful convictions.
Stress makes experience feel unforgettable while damaging the details. During intense fear, the brain prioritizes survival, locking onto threat. The core feeling burns in, while peripheral facts like timing, faces, or words become less stable.
People in distress can sincerely remember terror and misremember details. They're not lying, they're recalling an experience encoded under emergency. The emotional truth remains bright, but informational edges blur. This matters in witness testimony and personal storytelling. Intensity can narrow the beam.
The memory returns with pounding heart and conviction, yet still contains gaps or distortions. Confidence, too, can be manufactured by posture, praise, and social reinforcement.
Confidence feels like an inner resource, but it's often built from outside signals. Stand differently, you may feel differently. Be praised repeatedly, hesitation shrinks. Receive approving smiles, and a doubter starts sounding authoritative. Confidence is socially shaped.
Leaders and manipulators create an atmosphere where someone feels stronger or more decisive because the environment reflects competence back at them. The body joins in, voice steadies, Soon, confidence feels internal because it's embodied.
Certainty can be grown through posture, praise, and response until it feels like personality. Charisma often works by making listeners feel vividly seen and chosen, inspiring fierce loyalty.
Charisma isn't just confidence. Magnetic people create special recognition. Listeners feel visible, as if the speaker understands something private within them. A glance lingers, a phrase seems tailored. That experience can be electrifying.
When that feeling takes hold, skepticism softens. The charismatic figure isn't just offering ideas, they seem like the rare person who truly sees you. This is why charisma is powerful in religion, politics, cult leadership. It wraps influence in intimacy.
People don't just admire the speaker, they feel personally invited into meaning. And once someone feels chosen, they follow farther than reason alone would carry them. Storytelling can also bypass resistance because the brain loves meaning before evidence.
A direct argument invites objection. A story slips past defenses. Once a narrative begins, the mind searches for characters, motives, tension. That hunger for meaning makes people open to embedded ideas. A well-told story feels like discovery, not instruction.
As listeners follow the emotional path, their guard lowers. They're inhabiting the world the story creates. This is why stories shape religion, politics, advertising. They organize reality into something the heart can travel through. A fact may be forgotten. A story becomes part of how a person sees themselves.
Influence grows stronger when it arrives not as a command, but as a meaning shaped like a journey. Humor, too, can lower defenses and slip ideas past skepticism. Some effective persuasion arrives disguised as a joke.
Laughter changes the social atmosphere, relaxes tension, creates bonding, signals safety. In that softened state, people are more open to what comes next. A joke introduces an insult, stereotype, or suggestion in a lighter, easier-to-accept form.
If challenged, the speaker retreats behind playfulness. If embraced, the idea has entered under cover of amusement. Humor rewards belonging. Laughing together makes people feel aligned. This gives humor power in propaganda, recruitment, online culture.
Something funny travels farther than the same idea stated seriously because the mind is enjoying the moment instead of guarding the gate. Anger spreads through groups faster than calm, careful reasoning.
Anger is contagious because it's built for speed. When one person shows outrage, others pick up the signal quickly. The body responds before careful thought. Heart rate rises, attention narrows. The group orients toward an enemy. Calm reasoning moves slowly, asking for pause, context.
Anger offers something simpler. What matters, who's to blame, how to feel now. That clarity makes it socially efficient. A burst of anger spreads with startling force. Even neutral people join because emotion becomes evidence that something serious is happening.
This is why anger is useful for manipulation. It doesn't need everyone to think alike. It needs enough bodies to ignite so the mood outruns reflection. Moral outrage can become addictive when identity is tied to being right.
There's a special charge from feeling not just angry but righteous. Moral outrage combines emotion with virtue, telling you your fury is noble. This creates a powerful inner reward, feeling energized, justified.
In environments where status comes from signaling purity, outrage becomes reinforcing. It earns attention, approval. Some people seek situations that let them experience that rush. Conflict becomes identity. Being right feels like a stimulant. This makes moral outrage dangerous in groups.
It stops being a response to genuine wrong and becomes a recurring emotional habit. The cause sounds noble, but the nervous system craves the feeling. Indignation drives behavior more than principle. People also copy emotional states from others more than they realize.
Humans constantly tune themselves to one another. A tense room tightens your chest. A smiling face brightens your mood. A bored group drains excitement. Emotion is social. We read tone, breathing, posture automatically, and our nervous systems adjust.
We often mistake the result for a private feeling, but part of it was borrowed. This explains why moods shift dramatically in workplaces, families, online spaces. Emotional states move like weather.
This process is useful for connection, but creates vulnerability. A manipulator doesn't always need to change your thoughts directly. Shaping the emotional atmosphere can change you from the outside in. Mirror neurons hint at how minds influence minds.
When scientists found neurons firing both when an action was performed and observed, it sparked excitement. These mirror neurons suggested a built-in bridge between seeing and doing, between another's movement and our own inner simulation.
The idea spread to theories about empathy, imitation. While some claims were exaggerated, the deeper fascination remains. We aren't detached observers. We model what we see from the inside. A yawn spreads, a wince makes you flinch. The brain echoes others' actions.
That echo explains why influence can feel immediate, bodily, intimate. Smiles, nods, and timing can train behavior without a single command.
Much human behavior is shaped by tiny signals rewarding one action and cooling another. A smile at the right moment encourages talking. A nod strengthens confidence. Delayed attention makes someone doubt themselves. These responses function like a training system.
People lean toward what earns warmth and away from silence or tension. Parents, teachers, friends, and skilled manipulators all do this. The person being shaped rarely notices the pattern.
They just feel more natural in some behaviors. That feeling has been socially sculpted. Influence doesn't always need speeches or threats. It lives in timing, expression, guiding behavior through 1,000 small moments. Intermittent rewards can bind the brain more strongly than constant ones.
A reward given every time is pleasant. A reward given unpredictably can be irresistible. When praise or wins arrive on an uncertain schedule, the brain becomes more engaged. It chases the next payoff with heightened focus because uncertainty generates anticipation.
The person doesn't know when the reward is coming, so they keep returning, checking, hoping. This pattern appears in gambling, unstable relationships, social media. A partner warm one day, cold the next, creates stronger attachment than steady kindness.
Uncertainty sharpens pursuit. The mind becomes trapped not only by pleasure, but by the suspense surrounding pleasure. It keeps reaching because the next moment might deliver what it wants. Slot machines, for example, exploit learning systems built for survival.
Slot machines hijack ancient brain systems. In nature, uncertain rewards signaled opportunity. Search longer and there might be food. A slot machine turns this machinery against the player. Lights flash, sounds celebrate near wins. Rewards are unpredictable.
Small losses are followed by possibilities of reversal. The machine teaches the brain to stay engaged through suspense. Even near misses stimulate play. The game isn't just taking money, it's training attention, hope, persistence through an engineered loop.
A device for leisure tap systems meant for survival. Notifications are also designed to tug attention with tiny bursts of uncertainty. The phone in your pocket is a sophisticated attention capture device.
A notification is rarely just information. It's a carefully timed interruption wrapped in mystery. Someone liked something, replied, something needs you. That uncertainty is the hook. Attention is pulled with surprising force.
Bright badges, sounds, vibrations, intermittent timing all make checking urgent. The interruption is small, seems harmless, yet repeated enough, it fractures concentration, training the brain into constant readiness for outside input.
The device shapes when thought starts, stops, turns. We feel we're freely checking, but our attention is summoned by engineered questions the nervous system hates leaving unanswered. Recommendation systems, too, can trap thought inside invisible tunnels of repetition.
A recommendation system doesn't need to command your mind. It just keeps placing the same kind of thing in your path. Watch one provocative clip, and the system offers more of the same. It feels like convenience initially, but repetition narrows the world.
The same themes, emotional cues, styles of explanation return, feeling normal, while alternatives vanish. This creates an invisible tunnel where you feel free, yet meet the same ideas.
The effect is powerful because it doesn't feel like censorship, it feels like discovery. A mind fed the same pattern eventually mistakes algorithmic repetition for independent confirmation and private opinion for the shape of reality. Deepfakes then threaten trust by making false sites feel undeniably real.
For most of history, seeing carried enormous authority. I saw it with my own eyes was strong proof. Deepfakes threaten us. With modern tools, a face speaks words it never said. A person appears where they never visited. Lip movements, voice patterns are stitched convincingly.
Deep fakes are dangerous because they don't argue with the mind. They bypass straight to the senses. Even knowing manipulation is possible, the visual experience lands with force because the brain trusts richly detailed perception. Damage spreads in two directions. False material is believed, genuine material doubted.
Trust becomes unstable, and reality loses an anchor. Personalized feeds can create separate realities for people sharing one world.
Two people in the same city, under the same government, can spend the day in entirely different informational worlds. Personalized feeds make this possible. One sees fear, another optimism, a third grievance. Each feed is tailored by clicks, watch time, predictions of what keeps attention engaged.
The result isn't just opinion difference, it's world difference. Facts arrive in different orders with different emotional frames. Mutual understanding is harder because disagreement doesn't start from a shared scene.
People compare maps from separate planets? What's astonishing is how quiet this is. No loud announcement that your reality is customized, it just unfolds one scroll at a time. Outrage is profitable because it keeps attention awake and returning.
Few mental states lock people in as effectively as outrage. It sharpens focus, raises emotion, creates a sense of urgency. For platforms competing for attention, outrage is incredibly valuable. Calm understanding leads to closure, outrage leads to return.
People check for updates, arguments, new targets. They come back not because they feel good, but because the emotional loop is open. Anger encourages sharing. Moral urgency makes people want witnesses. A scandal travels farther than something balanced.
Not every expression of outrage is fake, but systems rewarding engagement care that it's strong and repeatable. In that economy, indignation becomes excellent fuel. The illusion of choice can control behavior while preserving the feeling of freedom.
One of the cleverest forms of influence stages choice. People are offered options that look independent while quietly leading to the same outcome. Ask a child to do homework now or in 10 minutes, not to refuse. A customer chooses between premium plans while the simplest is hidden.
The result is powerful because people resist overt control more than guided autonomy. If you feel you chose the path, the decision sits more comfortably. You defend it, fail to notice how constrained it was.
This technique works because freedom isn't just options, it's meaningful alternatives. Shape those alternatives in advance, and behavior is directed with precision while you feel independent. Nudges, too, steer decisions without bans or pressure.
A nudge is influence at its softest. Nothing is forbidden, no one is shouted at. But the environment is arranged, so one choice is easier or more visible. Put healthy food at eye level, people take more. Remind neighbors most pay taxes, compliance rises.
These small changes reveal something profound. Human choice is shaped by context. We decide inside layouts, defaults, timings, social hints. Nudges can be used for good, but when does guidance become manipulation?
If behavior can be steered without awareness, the line between helping people choose and quietly choosing for them blurs. Defaults shape behavior powerfully because many people never change them.
One of the strongest forms of influence is hidden in a setting people barely notice. The default option matters because many accept what's in place. They're busy, unsure, or assume the preset choice is a recommendation. A box already ticked, a privacy setting open, a subscription renewing, these shape behavior on a massive scale.
Organ donation rates, retirement savings, app permissions, they shift dramatically depending on the default. This is astonishing because nothing dramatic is happening. People aren't persuaded with speeches. They're guided by inertia.
The preset becomes the path of least resistance, which often becomes the world people live in. Whoever controls the default often controls the outcome, not by argument, but by deciding what happens when nobody intervenes. Architecture, too, guides movement, mood, and obedience without speaking.
A building influences behavior before anyone speaks. Narrow corridors create order. High ceilings inspire awe. Heavy doors signal seriousness. Religious spaces, courtrooms, prisons, they use architecture for psychological effect.
The body reads space quickly, noticing who stands above where the gaze is drawn. A room invites conversation or suppresses it, soothes, intimidates, without verbal command. Architecture works through atmosphere, posture, path. By the time you form an opinion about a place, it may have formed part of your opinion about yourself.
Bright lights and mirrored spaces can increase self-awareness and restraint, showing how our environment influences how we think about ourselves.
People behave differently when visible. Bright light exposes, mirrors return the self to the self. A person in a well-lit reflective space becomes more conscious of posture and conduct without deciding to. This heightened self-monitoring leads to more restraint and conformity.
Even subtle cues of being watched can alter honesty and self-control. It relies on making the self harder to ignore. In a dim setting, impulse loosens. In a bright one, the mind returns to reputation, internal standards.
The room becomes a silent witness and behavior shifts. Background scent also alters spending, trust, and perceived comfort, entirely below conscious notice.
Smell is a fast route to emotion, reaching deep brain systems. This makes scent a quiet tool of influence. A pleasant fragrance in a hotel makes it seem cleaner. A bakery smell increases appetite. Certain scents in shops link to changes in mood, spending, trustworthiness.
The person has no idea the smell shapes judgment. They just report the environment felt welcoming or calming. Scent doesn't present itself as an argument. It works beneath where people expect persuasion. A room changes how safe something feels before the conscious mind explains why. The nose opens a door and the rest of the mind walks through.
Temperature can change social judgments more than people expect. Physical sensation bleeds into emotional and moral perception.
Warmth and cold don't stay neatly in the body. Physical warmth links to greater closeness, generosity. Cold makes situations feel harsher. The brain doesn't process physical sensation and social meaning as separate worlds. It mixes them. Hold something warm and another person seems friendlier.
Sit in discomfort and the room feels less forgiving. Judgments that seem purely mental may be partly embodied. We like to imagine opinions emerge from reason, but the body state colors how open or guarded the mind becomes. Hunger makes impulsive choices more likely.
Hunger changes how the mind handles urgency, patience, reward. Low on fuel, immediate payoff looks attractive. People become more impulsive, irritable, drawn to quick solutions, even unrelated to meals. This makes sense evolutionarily. A hungry organism prioritizes rapid gain.
But in modern life, that ancient logic leaks into shopping, conflict, negotiation. A hungry person may overreact, overspend. What's fascinating is how invisible this feels. You think you're making a rational choice, but physiology has tilted the field.
Sometimes the mind isn't weak, it's just trying to decide while running low. Pain, too, can narrow thought until relief feels more persuasive than truth. Sustained discomfort has been used as a tool of coercion.
Pain reorganizes the mind around itself. Whether physical or distress, attention collapses inward. Make this stop. This narrowing is human but creates vulnerability. When relief is dominant, people accept explanations or commands they'd normally question.
A patient in agony trusts too quickly. Under physical discomfort, one confesses or complies to shorten the experience. Pain changes thought's economy. Long-term reasoning is harder, moral complexity less vivid. Immediate escape outweighs careful truth.
This is why pain has a long history in coercion, medicine. It doesn't need to erase the mind, it crowds it. Suffering fills consciousness, and anything associated with relief looks authoritative. The body often decides first, then the mind invents a reason.
People experience themselves as thinkers who weigh evidence, then choose. But often the process runs the opposite way. A body reacts first. A face feels trustworthy, a tone wrong, a room unsafe. These rapid judgments arise below awareness.
Only afterward does the conscious mind stitch together a narrative. The reason given may be real, but not the whole cause. The body had already leaned. The mind arrived to author the story.
This reveals how much human judgment is embodied before it becomes verbal. We don't always reason our way into decisions. We feel our way there first, then describe the route. Split-second impressions guide choices long before reflection.
The human mind forms startlingly fast impressions from a face, voice, posture. In a fraction of a second, we judge confidence, warmth, threat. These instant readings aren't always fair or accurate, but they shape everything that follows.
An interview, a date, a trial, all are tilted by those first moments before thoughtful analysis. Later, information is filtered through that opening impression. We feel these judgments as natural, not rapid. We think, I just had a sense. That sense guides trust and suspicion before evidence has a fair chance.
And sometimes people defend beliefs more fiercely after seeing contradictory evidence. This counterintuitive reaction helps explain why facts alone so often fail to change minds.
Contradiction doesn't always weaken belief, it hardens it. When evidence threatens a conviction, the result is defensive search, not open reconsideration. People search for flaws in the challenge, reinterpret facts, or cling tighter precisely because it feels under attack.
This is strong when belief is tied to identity or group belonging. The threat isn't just intellectual, it feels personal. The mind treats contradiction as proof that enemies are circling.
Failed prophecies sometimes strengthen cults. Debates push people deeper into positions. Belief becomes more intense in the presence of disconfirming evidence, not because evidence was weak, but because the self felt cornered. The backfire effect is rarer than rumored, but motivated reasoning is real.
The idea that facts could make people believe the opposite was dramatic, but less common. Yet people reason in motivated ways. They're more welcoming to information that flatters their side, more suspicious of evidence that threatens it.
The mind isn't a neutral courtroom, it's an advocate protecting values and emotional investments. Truth struggles to enter, not because facts always reverse belief, but because belief has hidden attorneys working constantly in its defense. Once identity fuses with belief, facts feel like personal attacks.
A belief changes character when it becomes something you are. Disagreement feels like an assault on selfhood. Arguments about politics or religion become explosive because beneath them lies the question, what kind of person am I?
If this belief falls, evidence arrives with emotional heat. A challenge feels humiliating. People fight back not because facts are weak, but because stakes feel existential. This fusion is a powerful engine of mental rigidity, turning revision into loss.
The mind protects belief like the body protects skin. Memory is reconstructed each time, making it easier to reshape. The past you carry may differ from what actually happened.
Memory isn't a stored object. Remembering is like rebuilding. Each time the brain reassembles it from traces, emotions, later knowledge, it becomes open to change. New details slip in, old emphasis fades, emotional tone shifts.
This makes memory powerful yet vulnerable. It adapts, heals, but also is revised by repetition, suggestion, imagination. A story told often enough reflects the retellings, not the original event.
The person experiences the result as direct access to the past, feeling certainty, not reconstruction. Yet every act of remembering is editing, and the past changes each time we bring it back. Eyewitness certainty can be powerful, persuasive, and completely wrong.
Few things are more convincing than a confident witness pointing. Juries trust it, yet decades of research show eyewitness confidence can be dangerously misleading. Memory for faces is vulnerable to stress, poor lighting, suggestion.
A witness starts uncertain, then grows confident through repetition and feedback. By court, certainty sounds absolute, even if original perception was shaky. It combines strong emotion, moral urgency, authority of lived experience while remaining fallible. A person can be honest, sincere, and wrong.
The confidence persuades not because it guarantees truth, but because it feels so humanly real. Children are especially sensitive to suggestion because trust comes first.
A child enters the world, depending on older minds, to explain what's real. Trust is childhood's strength and vulnerability. When a trusted adult asks leading questions, a child may reshape memory to fit expectations. This doesn't mean children are foolish. Their social wiring learns from caregivers before skepticism is built.
In legal settings, therapy, schools, a child can become certain partly because certainty was socially rewarded. The feeling of recall may be sincere, yet the content guided. The child isn't just reporting reality, they're learning how reality is supposed to sound.
Recovered memories can feel real even when details were accidentally shaped. This sits at the intersection of mind, truth, and introspection. Memory brought back after years feels electrifying. A forgotten scene returns, emotion surges.
Sometimes that's what happened. But memory recovery isn't simple excavation. It's reconstruction shaped by suggestion, imagination, the atmosphere of recall. If encouraged to search for trauma, details form around that pressure.
The final memory feels real because the emotion attached to it is real, yet parts of the scene may have been built later. This subject is sensitive. A person can be sincere, shaken, and still carry a memory whose final form was shaped during the search itself. Hypnotic suggestion can influence sensation without erasing free will.
Hypnosis alters experience while leaving the person recognizable. Under suggestion, a hand feels lighter, pain dims, a taste seems sweeter. Brain imaging suggests genuine shifts in attention and perception.
This doesn't turn a person into a puppet. Values, boundaries, personality don't vanish. The person remains an active participant. The mind is guided by language, expectation, focused attention without surrendering the whole self. Suggestion works with the mind's machinery. Stage hypnosis, too, works partly because expectation becomes performance and permission.
A stage show looks like pure mind control. Volunteers dance, freeze, but people on stage expect something unusual. They've agreed to a setting where normal restraint is loosened. They're surrounded by pressure and cues.
The hypnotist's suggestions matter, but so do permission and role. The volunteer acts within a powerful public frame where extraordinary behavior belongs. It's not fake. Social expectation and suggestion work together. The mind becomes willing to follow a temporary script because the environment makes it feel possible and safe. Brain stimulation can shift mood, movement, impulse with electricity.
Touch the brain with electricity and experience changes. Doctors use stimulation to reduce tremors, interrupt symptoms, study regions for mood or decision-making. A tiny current alters neural firing. You move easier, feel a mood shift.
Thought and feeling are nudged by something as physical as electricity. The change is helpful or unsettling. It reminds us the mind isn't floating above biology. It emerges from tissue whose activity can be modulated. If circuits are adjusted from outside, will and identity may be more delicate. Electrodes deep in the brain have even triggered laughter or déjà vu.
During neurosurgery, stimulating tiny regions while awake creates extraordinary results. A pulse triggers laughter, another fear, some déjà vu. These episodes appear and disappear in seconds, tied to stimulation. They reveal our deeply personal experiences depend on fragile patterns inside neural circuits.
The feeling is genuine while it lasts, even if artificial. A current conjures something intimate and meaningful, reminding us how physical inner life is. Scientists can decode rough images from brain activity, raising questions about mental privacy.
The inside of the mind seemed private. You could ask what someone saw, but not directly glimpse it. This boundary is blurring. Using brain scans, scientists reconstruct visual information from activity patterns.
It's not a perfect photograph, but it resembles shapes, scenes with startling accuracy. The brain processes, and perception leaves readable traces. The mind isn't speaking words, yet its activity is translated. Technology is limited, but the direction is clear. Thought may never feel sealed off again. Brain-computer interfaces raise new questions about thought, privacy, control.
A brain-computer interface translates neural activity into action, moving a cursor, typing words. For paralyzed people, this offers communication and agency, yet it opens unsettling questions. If a machine reads intention, what's mental privacy?
If software guides neural activity, where does assistance end and influence begin? These are emerging practical concerns. The more devices connect with the brain, the more important it is to ask who owns the data, who interprets it. Once technology meets thought at the neural level, freedom depends on safeguards we're only imagining.
Neurochemicals like dopamine can make learning feel irresistible and automatic. Systems exploiting this operate at a scale no previous generation ever faced.
Dopamine isn't just pleasure, it's about salience, motivation, the urge to pursue what's rewarding. When dopamine circuits fire, the brain tags an action as important. This explains why learning feels automatic. A successful game move, a social reward, lights up motivation. Repetition feels compelling.
The brain anticipates the next chance, the next signal. This is great for survival, but modern systems exploit it. Apps, games, markets tap the same machinery. What feels like interest is partly chemistry, teaching the mind what to chase.
Oxytocin can increase trust, but not always wisdom. This distinction is crucial in social neuroscience. Oxytocin is romanticized as a bonding chemical, playing roles in attachment, caregiving.
But its effects are complex. It can make people more trusting and open. That sounds wonderful until you realize trust isn't wisdom. A trusting person isn't better at detecting manipulation or danger. Stronger bonding may deepen loyalty to one's own group while making outsiders more distant.
Oxytocin reveals how social chemistry amplifies connection without guaranteeing good judgment. The warm feeling of closeness is real, but leaves a person vulnerable if the target of trust is harmful. Bonding is powerful, but not a moral compass. Psychedelics temporarily loosen rigid thought patterns and suggestibility.
Under psychedelics, ordinary mental boundaries become less fixed. Familiar thought loops soften. Assumptions seem strange or fluid. This is why they're studied for depression or trauma. When rigid habits loosen, new perspectives are possible.
But that openness can also increase suggestibility. In an altered state, setting, guidance, expectation, social influence carry greater weight. A supportive environment steers toward healing, a manipulative one, somewhere darker. These substances rearrange how belief, meaning, interpretation are formed.
When the mind becomes more flexible, it can become more free, but also more permeable. So how do we defend against all these forces?
Meditation can strengthen awareness of mental influence by slowing automatic reactions. It's one of the most practical tools for free thinking. Thought moves quickly, feeling arises, judgment forms, behavior begins before we notice the sequence. Meditation interrupts this speed.
By practicing attention to breath or thought, we catch mental events earlier. Irritation is noticed before it turns into speech. A craving is seen before it becomes action. A fear-soaked story is recognized as a story, not a command.
This doesn't make us immune to influence, but it widens the space between impulse and response. In that space, suggestion is easier to examine. It trains observation of the machinery itself. The mind that notices how it's being pulled gains freedom. Mindfulness reveals how many thoughts arrive without being invited.
Sit quietly, and you notice thoughts appear spontaneously. Plans, worries, songs, judgments. Mindfulness makes this visible in a way busyness hides. We notice much of mental life is spontaneous, not chosen. That realization is humbling and liberating.
Humbling, because the mind is less under command. Liberating, because not every thought has to be obeyed or believed. A person who sees thoughts arriving automatically is less dazzled by them. Mindfulness doesn't stop the stream, it changes the relationship to it. Prophets, oracles, rulers have long used altered states to guide belief.
The authority unusual mental states confer is one of the oldest forms of social power. Ancient societies noticed unusual states carried authority. A trembling oracle, a fasting mystic, could seem to touch another level of reality.
Altered states made words feel heavier, more than personal. Induced by ritual, sleep loss, intoxicants, these conditions convinced listeners they were hearing revelation. Rulers understood this power. If a message linked to trance, belief traveled farther, resistance weakened. The altered state itself became persuasion.
The speaker embodied a condition suggesting contact with forces beyond ordinary judgment, reorganizing communities. Ancient empires understood spectacle as a tool for shaping public thought. This logic lives on in every modern rally.
Power doesn't always persuade by argument, sometimes by overwhelming the senses. Ancient empires used vast processions, monuments, military parades. A ruler elevated above crowds seemed less like a person, more like the center of reality.
Spectacle changed what people felt before they thought. Awe, fear, pride were generated through display, binding populations to myths. Modern states use image and staged emotion for similar reasons. A spectacle doesn't need to prove power in words, it lets people feel power in their bodies.
That feeling becomes its own argument. Cold War brainwashing fears mixed real psychology with cultural panic. Separating genuine science from mythology still matters.
The idea of brainwashing gripped the public. Stories of prisoners and hidden techniques created fear that minds could be rewritten. Some fear rested on real pressures: isolation, coercion, sleep deprivation, but the era added cultural panic, exaggerating the process into magic.
The truth was less cinematic, more disturbing. Minds are influenceable, but through social pressure, repetition, trauma, dependency, rather than instant takeover. The Cold War revealed vulnerabilities in psychology and a public appetite for dramatic myths about total control. The phrase mind control hides many forces, from ads to ideology.
The phrase sounds dramatic, pointing to hypnosis or secret experiments, but it covers a huge range of influences, many ordinary and visible. Advertising trains desire, algorithms steer attention, groups shape belief, language frames reality. None alone look like sci-fi control.
Yet together, they reveal human minds are constantly shaped by culture, environment, biology. The dramatic phrase misleads if it makes people search only for exotic techniques while ignoring everyday systems. What matters isn't whether control looks theatrical, but whether thought, choice, and perception are directed in ways we don't fully see.
The real story isn't one secret method, it's many overlapping pressures that quietly shape what feels natural, true, and chosen. The most effective influence often feels like your own idea.
Force attracts attention. Manipulation that feels self-generated slips through unnoticed. A person is guided to a conclusion, but the path is arranged so subtly that it feels internally authored. Suggestions are timed, options framed, emotional atmosphere set.
By the time the thought appears in consciousness, it feels like a personal insight. This is powerful because we defend our own ideas more fiercely. Once ownership is felt, resistance falls away. We don't feel controlled, we feel awakened or convinced.
That's the elegance of the method. It leaves pride intact. The mind loves discovery, and influence becomes strongest when it borrows that sensation instead of confronting it directly. Freedom of thought depends partly on noticing who is shaping attention.
Attention is the gateway for almost every influence. Before a belief settles, before a desire grows, something directs awareness to one object. A platform highlights one story, a leader repeats one thread. Once attention is captured, the rest of the mind builds around it.
Freedom of thought isn't just about opinions, it's seeing how those opinions are fed and framed. Someone who never questions what's placed before them may mistake curation for reality. Noticing the shapers of attention creates precious friction, slowing the automatic handoff from exposure to belief.
In that pause lies a real foundation of mental freedom, asking why this, why now, and who benefits. The mind is easiest to guide when it thinks it's fully free.
Open coercion provokes resistance. The elegant route leaves the feeling of freedom intact while shaping the path choices travel. If you believe you're acting entirely on your own, you're less likely to inspect influences. Social norms feel like common sense, defaults neutral, narratives self-discovered.
Emotional reactions feel personal. Influence disappears into the background, becoming difficult to question. Hidden guidance doesn't crush agency, it recruits it. Your own sense of autonomy becomes part of the mechanism. You walk willingly because the road feels natural.
It's a profound and eerie truth. We are often most influenceable not when freedom is removed, but when freedom is preserved as a feeling while the field around it has already been shaped.
That's a lot to consider, James. It makes you realize how intricately our minds are woven into a tapestry of influences, seen and unseen. Thank you for walking us through this fascinating and, at times, unsettling landscape of the human mind. If you found this conversation insightful, share it with someone who also appreciates a deeper look into how our world works.